as you said earlier, when you have all the negative news and stress around the world and polarization, you do need good stories. You need good um, source of hope, I think, for a lot of people to say, yes, not everything is falling apart. There is a silver lining in everything that we're going through. There will be a different, we can say better, worse, or indifferent, but it will be a different world tomorrow, and we can all hope that we'll have the ability to influence it in the best possible way. So thank you for what you're doing, and thrilled to be the guest for 132. Yay.
And Stella, I really admire the works that you do, and so humanizing the workplace is something that you know there's something that's not right about the workplace, and it's been there for a very long time. I've been luckily also started my career within the human resource space. So we've been hearing a lot of people talking about human at first, human center, people are greater assets, but then uh, the way that they say and the application at work seems to be minimal, different, and like it's different. So when I see your mission is to humanize the workplace and the works that you do and the books that you author and co-author, and I want to bring you to the show and have people to first to network with you, to know who you are, to understand the journey that makes you to doing what you are doing today, and why you have that passion, the mission to to change the workplace. So that's a and if out there are people that have the same purpose, the same mission like you, they they will know that they are another friend on this planet Earth. They can be connecting to learn and to support one another. So I
So,
want. All right.
so it's interesting because everyone has their own journey, and I think we all think that it requires like a big transformation, a big project, a big mission in life. But at the core, I think a lot of change can be started in very small moments, right? In helping somebody solve a problem, in recommending somebody else or speaking on their behalf, or connecting somebody with others in the organization so that they can be better as a result of it. So those moments, little moments, they not only help somebody, it gives you the satisfaction that you actually did something positive today. It also creates an example for others to follow. And good deeds, like bad ones, are contagious, right? So the more we can show up for each other and for our colleagues and behave in a way that we would like to be treated, I think the more likely others will watch and feel inspired to do so. So there's no movement that starts with, it starts in the trenches. It starts with one person taking the stand and having the courage to do something good. But how I got to this point, I have been in the technical world for most of my career. I studied math and computer science. I was a management consultant for a good part of my working life. I did not study for anything HR specific. I ended up in HR by chance. I was I was sent to learn SAP and specifically the HR module, mostly because I was a woman. So I ended up learning both SAP and the HR world, and I never looked back. To me, it became such a natural progression and natural space because I could relate to everything I was doing. I could put myself in the shoes of the worker and think about the changes that I'm driving with technology and whether that has a positive impact on the experience of that worker. So I spent a good chunk of my time in technology implementation, in process improvement and shared services transformation, in strategy work. So to me, the opportunity was always to look at the higher level, right? If you do technology, you only can change what the technology offers, but if you change the process, then the technology will follow. If you change the service delivery model, then the process will follow and technology will follow. So to me, it was always kind of a progression, and I was hoping that yet the next thing and the next thing will give the change that I was looking for, and it was never sufficient. And eventually I moved into the world of analytics, and I was using my quantitative background, and a lot of the analytics was finally shedding light on opportunities, because you could speak with the business leaders and quantify the traditionally unquantifiable or squishy or soft kind of measurements. So people analytics really gave a tool that allowed leaders to, especially in HR, to have very different conversation about people management. However, when it comes to data, there's a positive aspect and there's always a darker side, because at the same time you could make very damaging decisions, and a lot of times data may be used for the purposes of improving the bottom line at the expense of human career, or ability to get promoted, or compensation growth, or whatever the decision is being used, not necessarily for the benefit of the worker. So that's when I decided to leave the corporate world and move to become more of a portfolio career person, and try to have a multi-pronged approach to changing mindsets. When I don't have a job that I need to worry about, and be concerned if I speak up my mind. So it's much easier to influence from outside. So that comes through the work I do, that comes through the teaching that I hope to inspire the next generation of leaders, that comes through my books and articles and speaking. So I am absolutely thrilled that you picked up on that mission, and you're helping me amplify and give a very different stage to that message.
Stella,
Thank you.
I'm the one who said thank you, because of the work from people like you change the conversation that we have at dining table at home. Because if we can change one leader at the time, and for them to see the humans, and to humanize the workplace that they are leading, right? And the people who comes to work will get home happy, because they're happy at work. And when you get home, you're happy going home. Your conversation during the dining table is very fruitful, and it builds hope for the generation, for the children, so when they get into the workforce, they get ready to go to the workforce, they're happy people. And that is what we want to be for the world. We want to build a good planet, and good future, be good works for the people, and the meaning works for the people. So I want to say thank you for that, and I also want to say congratulations for doing that noble works that you do, Stella.
Thank you.
Yeah. For now, allow me to bring you all the way back to when you were young, okay? Because a lot of us have dreams, and we want to transfer that, and that dreams to the generations, next generation also. Because when I was young, I want to become an astronaut for some reason. I didn't give me the opportunity, but but then and then it takes me to a different path to what I'm doing at the moment. I want to know, back then, Stella, what did you think? What did you dream when you grow up? What kind of works? What kind of contribution you're going to bring forth to the world?
Can I address the space and the astronaut aspect first?
Absolutely.
The class I teach at NYU, it's called Digital Workplace Design. And the case study we're working on is establishing a colony on Mars and rethinking all the HR and workplace processes in order to establish this colony. So it is a fictitious company that we work on. It is a scenario that realistically, at least based on what we hear from the news, by 2030 may happen. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to prepare the leaders, the HR leaders that will help build that future and help find the talent and create that experience. So I have a huge passion for space innovation, for space exploration. I do think that there's a lot of fascinating opportunities. There is a lot of innovation that is going to come to us on Earth as a result of pursuing those dreams. And I think it also gives inspiration and aspiration to modern leaders to become more of a global thinkers and global citizens and universe citizens, as opposed to just worrying about the small square foot they occupy on Earth. So to me, if there's a different way to channel your passion for space, go for it, because I feel like there is it's a revival of the opportunities. We see a lot more both commercial and civilians making into the suborbital space. So we're on a brink, I think, of a very different era in space exploration. So
and I believe that too. I believe that too. One day that space travel is become accessible for for us, and I think it's gonna happen in our lifetime too. So
I completely believe that. Yeah. So as far as what I wanted to be, I never had a specific destination in mind on what it is that I want to do, but I was absolutely fascinated by science fiction and by innovation, by how much human capacity can solve incredible problems that people cannot imagine. So to me, all of this imagination, creativity was such an inspiration, because right now, if you look at a lot of science fiction from 40, 50 years ago, those are textbook for current innovators. A lot of things that have been at that point in time science fiction are now reality, and the science has advanced to make it so. So to me, I see I find it really easy to connect the dots, to see patterns, and then try to think about how will that change how we work, right? How will new advancements in the space of AI, utilization of AI to make workplace decisions, how will that impact the work environment? Will that bring bias? Will that create disparities? Will that create a very different relationship between the organization and the workers? Or if we think about robotics or exoskeletons, those will give us superpower, right? They may take over some of the unsafe working activities, or they may augment our human capacity. What does it mean to work in an environment where you have bionic augmented human beings working side by side with regular ones? From a HR perspective, will that impact how you measure performance, how you define quality, and how do you redesign the space to accommodate people with different spare parts or replacement parts of their bodies? So it is beginning to bring that innovation that typically is left for improving consumers' experience or workplace operation towards the experience of worker and interacting with these new advancements. It's not only giving us superpower, but it has to be designed very mindfully, so we don't create unexpected negative consequences. We don't create division and polarization in the work environment. We don't create and discriminate people for certain physical conditions or preferences or utilization of some of these technologies. So I think the more we can get our head above the water and sometimes pay attention to what's happening at the macro level, at the systemic level, what's happening in the labs, what are some of the new things that are just beginning to emerge as signals of the future trends, and how might those impact the way we work, what we define as a workforce, what type of practices we need to have in the workplace, and how do we make sure that it's designed very responsibly and inclusively and accessibly.
So, Stella, for how many long years like that, how can you keep your eyes open for innovative ideas, for something that out there in the macro levels, and be welcome and embrace them to come to you to expand your perspective and connecting the dots for the work that you do? How can you have an eyes like that over the years?
There are a lot of sources. First of all, you start with the news. You go to the news. Majority of the official sources of news may have a section on technology, or they may have a section on science, or they may have like Wall Street Journal, I think, has future of everything category. A lot of those articles that are being written by described in some of these media outlets are already here, right? They may be under the category of future of, but they're here because it's already in the common awareness, and it's being popularized, and the information is being spread to the audience to the readership. The interesting innovations can be gleaned from some of the patents databases. If you look at what are some of the patents that are waiting to be brought to the market for the space innovation or space exploration, you'll find where the world is going and how you may not even grasp at first the possibilities. But they're going to happen. It's just a matter of time until they become reality and some eager innovator decides to pursue and start thinking how to solve this specific problem. It is also looking at academic institutions. Many of them have some of these smaller labs that do specific research on specific topics. For example, at NYU, we have a lab on AI, right? So there is a lot of exploration on the impact of AI to make sure that it's designed in a responsible way, that there is transparency, what is the impact on policy, etc. So the more you can start looking at these, sources or destinations where innovation can happen and come from, be that innovation lab or patents or futurists that describe specific scientific and technical innovations, the more you'll be able to start seeing patterns and then start connecting the dots and saying, ooh, I saw a lot of this discussion around synthetic biology. Let me do a little bit of the research. Let me just Google, or let me go read some papers on Google if there are anything published around that, and you'll start seeing volumes and volumes. And of course, over time you start discerning and saying, yeah, this is just too far out, or probably not going to have business potential, and therefore you will not see investments fast enough to make it happen really soon. So maybe it's something that will happen longer term, so you put it on a shelf, and then as some new news come around the same topic, then you say, oh, I see the frequency increasing. Maybe that will happen much sooner than I thought. So it's more of a game, and it's an exercise. And I think once you start doing it, becomes kind of a second nature. It's more of a curiosity. I think what I found helpful for me is to have some sort of a framework or a lens to look and sift through these changes. So I use the 4 W's. Work, workforce, workplace, and worth. So let me give you an example of how this can apply. So a few years ago, I read in an article about Lowe's, which is a local home goods warehouse organization company. They sell things to repair your home, to paint, to outfit. So it's a home goods organization or store, a retailer. They were experimenting with exoskeletons, and they were giving it to people to help them lessen the strain on their body from lifting heavy objects. So I thought, it's like, that's an interesting innovation, right? It's an interesting new use of exoskeleton in the work environment. So if I think about work, what does it mean to work with an exoskeleton? How would the job description change? Will it change at all? Will the requirements of the job change? Right? And what I, as an individual, am doing day in and day out. So that's work. The workforce, does it change who we can hire? Because now you may not be required to be a strong, with strong muscles and tall. Instead, you can hire somebody who has less physical ability, just because you're able to amplify their physical abilities with exoskeleton. So that's the workforce. If you think about the workplace, will you now have the ability to shrink the distance between shelves, just because you don't need a forklift to move between all of the shelves in the warehouse? You have now strong people who can lift the buckets of sand or whatever they're trying to lift up, and as a result, you may increase the capacity of your house. And so that's the workplace. And then the worth. This is the value exchange between the organizations and individuals. How will that change? Will you have fewer injuries potentially in the work environment? Will you possibly enable more diversity, just because people with different abilities will now be able to do the work? Will you possibly make people proud, just because they say, "Ooh, I have a superpower. I can lift objects usually not possible for me to lift, or do something really a lot more power, use a lot more power." Will that impact how you measure performance? Because there will be people who don't have exoskeletons and some who do. So you start getting into this reflection and take one simple example of the exoskeleton and put them through different lenses and think about the impact. And then you say, yes, it's a really welcome technology in the work environment, especially when you have heavy duty work, or work that imposes physical strain, to improve the working conditions for people. So I shelved it as something that is here and something that it's worthwhile paying attention to.
So how's your student at the university respond to the plan of building the workforce to invading Mars?
There's no invasion. It is a colonization. It's establishing a colony. We're not invading. We're just going to create to terraform the space and create a tourism destination. Maybe build a hotel, build entertainment, service the visitors. So the students, of course, at first is kind of a little bit of a shock. It's like, why do we need to think about Mars when we have plenty of problems on Earth? But it's intentionally pushing them outside of the traditional box, because we do want to think differently. We want to remove the status quo thinking and the norms that are ingrained in the way we design HR processes, and be creative and saying, what if you hire somebody as part of a team or a cohort, and you develop them and you give them a very realistic preview of their potential experience on Mars, which may be unsafe, which may be, it may be a one-way destination. What are the considerations that you need to put in place? How do you design benefits? How do you design communications? How do you design upskilling? How do you design leadership capabilities? How do you cross-train so you make people interchangeable and more versatile? How do you, support them through different ups and downs of their personal and professional lives? So it is forcing us to think holistically about the human, because it requires a very different set of processes and support structures to make them effective and have a good experience at work. And at the end, we all come to the conclusion that a lot of things we do, we could bring them into today's environment. We could have that human centricity and think holistically about everything that the human needs, both at work and in personal life, because that all is part of the same formula, right? As you said earlier, if a person is not happy at work, that will spill into personal life and vice versa. So the more we can think about what are the frictions that person has at work, and how can you minimize those, and how can you help them be self-sufficient and solve the problems at home through whatever benefits or workplace offerings that you can provide to support them with that. The more they will realize how much value the organization places on them and how much somebody cares about them, that will go a long way to ensure people perform and do their work and stay with the company for longer term and grow others around them. So it's a reciprocity rule, and it's also changing the lens from looking through the HR processes horizontally to look at the worker experience, not how we define talent acquisition or performance management or compensation, but what it's like to be a worker from the moment you get up in the morning until you are productive, until you decide to leave the organization. So all of those touch points make a difference in people's lives. So human centricity versus HR process centricity.
And unfortunately, a lot of people out there still in the HR, centricity, and then do the works and in a very traditional way. So a lot of it's good to push them onto using their imaginations. If they can close their eyes and imagine the workplace they want to design, from scratch up, and like plant a tree, you can plant anything. What tree would you plant, and where would you water it, and why would you water it, and and stuff like that. And I've been doing that talk with a lot of people around us, and I'm telling you, this, Stella, is really it takes a lot of patience for you to doing so, because after you do a lot of talks, they get back home and the traditional way of working still come back, and it becomes checking ticking the box, and for them they're going home not happy themselves too, because their imagination can take them everywhere, but the work they do is only checking the box. So there's a huge gap between the work that they want to accomplish and the works that they actually accomplished. And so so you mentioned a very big word repeatedly in here, and that word is thinking. Okay. And my wife and I, we've been in the quest to help people to expand their abilities to think. And the reason for that is that we convict and believe that that human ability to think is not increasing, but it's diminishing. And every chance that I got it, and an opportunity to talk to somebody that the works involve a lot of thinking, thinking big, thinking deep, thinking strategically or critically, whatever, I will ask this question. Stella, how do you help yourself to expand your ability to think?
It is being curious. I think we live in a world where there is so much information coming at us, and it's really difficult to sift through all of it and kind of make sense of it. But I try to integrate multiple channels, right? In the morning when I do yoga, I watch some of the news on the YouTube. When I cook, I listen to podcasts. When I go for a walk, I listen to books. So I try to multitask and have, and I'm lucky that I'm auditory, so I perceive the information by listening to it. So it allows me to do things physically while listening and absorbing and learning new information. I also encourage everyone to talk to their children. And if you don't have your own, go talk to your neighbors or whoever, because they represent the world of tomorrow. You can learn so much by observing on how they interact with each other, how they talk. I just remember my oldest daughter, who is 26, she was texting, but texting in full sentences and really beautiful language. The middle one was texting with abbreviation, emoticons, just the classical texting. The youngest one, she does voice messages. She speaks. She doesn't even want to text anymore. So she speaks and then she sends the message. So when you watch different generations on how they interact with technology, how they talk to each other, what are the social norms that are evolving, it'll give you ideas of how technology is enabling that and some of the changing expectations. They are the future workers, right? And if they currently communicate in a certain way, most likely than not, they will expect the same kind of ease of interaction and usability of their tools and integration and intelligence to be in the work environment. So if you're not going to provide that, it's going to be a really tough time to attract them and retain them. And we're seeing that right now happening in the work environment. So talking to children, I think it's going to inspire a lot of thoughts and a lot of ideas. I have my middle son is involved with several DAOs, which is a distributed autonomous organizations. So I had no idea of the concept of DAO until he talked to me about it, and it just blew my mind when I started researching it. So it's not a corporate entity, it's not officially incorporated, but it is a group of people who are passionate about solving a specific problem that come together to solve it. So they have a very democratic way to identify what needs to get done next. And anyone who is a member of the DAO can submit a proposal for a project. And then everyone votes on the project. And then if it gets sufficient number of votes, then the person can work on it. And then they determine the amount of pay they're going to be paid. So from a HR perspective, it's like, how is that possible? What would the impact be on how we do organizational design, how we identify people, how do we remunerate them, what is the role of reputation in this future? Because that's what's driving people to perform better. You don't need performance management systems. You don't need all sorts of, motivational gimmicks. People do it because they know if they don't do it well, they're not going to get the next project. So it is, through their gaming world and through the social networks that he's a member of, that he discovered all of these new organizations to associate himself. And the rest is history. So thinking is just being curious and talking to different people. And the more diverse your network, the better, because you start connecting dots again across different sectors, different industries, different practices. And you also realize that a lot of innovation is happening at the intersection of these spaces. It's if you take technology and combine it with some of the traditional industries where the new solutions will come from, or where you take some ideas from biology and you bring it into the network science. So the more you can become curious about different spaces and just get yourself educated and get yourself familiar with the vocabulary, the more interesting ideas may occur, and the more interesting topics you may have to talk to somebody else about.
I think that every time that we talk to the people from the next generations, right? The few things that come up to my mind, I'm blow up my mind because my admirations for them is a lot, because they are bold, they're structured, they know exactly what they want, they have big ambitions, goals, and they leverage very very well, between the technology, the space of technology onto the space, the works they do, and whether or not we as leaders be able to create a space at work, the workplace for them, so that they feel welcome, they feel that their work's creating something meaningful, and so that they can contribute. And like I agree with you, the performance metric is just something that's so outdated. It's there for a reason, but if we can give people a cause for what they are doing, yet we at the core of what we do, we always want to do best. We always want to give our best shot at everything that we do, right? So if we can give them that cause, there's no need for the performance management anymore. And I do have that belief that great organizations out there are working on finding the way to eliminate, or minimize the use of performance management. No one want to be measure their performance.
Yeah, because it focuses you. It really limits the ability to be creative. It dehumanizes in a way, because it reduces your work identity to a number or a letter that you get. It gets attributed to you, and it's a really. Of course, if you're evaluated as a top performer, it's a great thing. But we all know that you have to calibrate, and you all know that you cannot give everyone top performer. So there's all these games that are being played, and that's where the disengagement begins, because people say, I've worked so hard. Maybe the business condition changed. Maybe I wasn't lucky to have all the resources necessary. Maybe I didn't have the right team or the right management support. And now I'm being penalized. And then the goalpost changes every year. And it's always a pursuit of excellence, which more likely than not is going to not be attainable. And ultimately it's going to disenfranchise and disengage individuals.
Absolutely. Stella, I want to talk about the books that you released this year. So 2022, 2 books introduced within the 6-month time frame. Tell us about them.
The pandemic gave the time and space to write, so with less travel, it was an opportunity to really take a lot of the ideas and thoughts that I've been speaking about and teaching about and put them on the paper. And I was really lucky to have 2 great co-authors and collaborators. And if anyone aspires to write the book, I would encourage you to find a co-conspirator because you have somebody to bounce ideas off, to keep each other accountable, to push and pull and test. So it's a great growth opportunity. And of course, it allows you to kind of build a better picture and a better content, just because each of you probably will have different strengths that will bring to the table. And as a result, the final product will be better. So when you think about the 2 books, the Humans at Work is really around the concepts of the frameworks, a way to look at the evolving workplace through the lens of those 4 Ws that I mentioned. So it's bringing more centricity, human centricity. It's bringing more empathy to the work environment. It's looking at the human as a whole unit, not just as a collection of skill or as a resume with experiences. The second book, The Humanizing Human Capital, it's an analytics lens. So how can you look at the worker journey and identify ways to quantify three elements. One, the impact on the worker experience of whatever changes to the work environment you're trying to do. Two, the efficiency of programs. And three, the impact on the business outcomes. Because many times we think about, let's say, talent acquisition, and we think through the lens of, candidates that came into the funnel, candidates who moved from one stage to the next. How many have been hired and made offer, and how many have stayed with the company beyond the 3 months? So it's very transactional set of measurements. However, we may not necessarily look at what it's like to be a candidate that went through that funnel. What about the candidate that never heard back from the recruiter, even though they applied, or they got rejected and never explained why they got rejected? What it's like to be a person who went through the onboarding and still have no idea how to navigate the company or doesn't have the equipment. So looking at it through the lens of experience, of course, talent acquisition, pipeline measures, and efficiency of the recruitment team. But then, how well are you choosing your and sourcing your candidates, and ultimately for them to produce the revenue that you expect them to produce, or satisfy the customer, or create the brand image that you expect them to. So doing a lot more longitudinal analysis and understanding the relationship between the quality of people you're bringing and your ability to be successful as a business. And the more data we have and the more interactions we have in the work environment nowadays, the more you can pick up a lot of these signals along the entire life cycle and identify not only what the business outcomes that you want to impact, but then the earliest intervention point in that life cycle to have a positive impact. Because if you look at the journey and say, well, everybody who goes through this onboarding and they are connected to a lot of mentors inside the organization, they become a lot more successful, and they are going to stay with the company for much longer, and they more likely than not will progress through the leadership ranks much faster. It's a little investment early on that makes a significant disproportionate impact. So in the book, we articulate how you think about these measurements along the employee life cycle so you can optimize your investments to get the most benefit out of those investments in your people.
Thanks for sharing that, Stella. I think it's like customer experience, right? So we're trying to find the space of customer experience. Now we're trying to keep the employees to have the best experience. And if we can do that, definitely, the employees, we have a different point of view about the brand, about the employers, and I believe that the retention will get better. The level of happiness at work will be better. And for if a company is wanting to start the employee experience journey, and what's the baby steps that they can do to shift their thinking from the HR perspective onto the employees, the human-centric approach?
I think one effective way is to have a listening strategy. Ask people, listen to them. So usually they may have surveys, or they may have pulse questionnaires, or they may run focus group. So the more you have a practice of listening and understanding what the workforce feels. So it's not an engagement survey. That's not where this is, what this is about. It's really engaging workers in not only airing their needs, but also helping get involved in solving the problems. So if you have a conversation and you say, look, we're deploying new set of benefits, or we want to bring a new a new offering for parental care support, you can have get your feedback from your workers. And more likely than not, you'll find out that parental care is important, but it's not just the parents of small children who need support. Maybe employees who have elderly or sick family members that they need the same kind of support. So by virtue of just asking and listening to what the needs may be and getting their feedback, you may learn that you have an opportunity to make small tweaks to have a more inclusive solution, and as a result also show that you listen and you take action based on the feedback. And that has virtuous positive impact ultimately in the relationship between the organization and the workers. So it's really keeping the finger on the pulse of the organization on how the employees feel. What are the emerging negative trends? What are the positive things that you need to celebrate? It's all a dynamic and ongoing relationship. And it's important also to not assume that everything has to be one size fits all at the organizational level. A lot of things are very localized, and they may be specific to a location or maybe specific to a region. So you really have to use the insights and the data at the granular level to make some of these personalized, tailored solutions available as well. And the data now allows to do that.
Yep. So create a strategy for listening, and then be able to capture things that we can celebrate and things that we need to make improvements on. And I think like the workforce is just like a human body like us, right? So if we listen to ourselves, and then we cheer ourselves up, at the same time we need to figure out things that we need to make improvements and put the strategy into change and make the change to happen. And it's all boiled down to the ability for leaders to listen. Then the big question is, leaders these days are too busy already and create more. I think that everybody that we ask is like, oh, I don't have time, and things like that. So how can we change the mindset from shifting from don't have time but invest onto spending time to listen, that can help them to save time in the future to fix the issue or make changes?
There are two aspects to it, right? On one side, we can say there is this person that doesn't listen and assume a leader is always there to make him or herself available for all of the conversations. And while it's important, maybe not always realistic and maybe not always possible. But one example of how analytics can help with this kind of challenges. So back at IBM, that was 2011, 2012, we built a sentiment analysis tool. So it was ingesting the data from internal social network and combining it with the employee records and characteristics, and then anonymizing it at the point of collection. So this way we were dealing with anonymous data, but we can still segment and say, well, we see that sellers in North America are talking about X, Y, and Z, and that comes up as a positive sentiment or as a negative sentiment. So very quickly you can see that trending topics that you can understand, that specific groups have pain or are expressing it. So you may not need to have a leader talking about it, but as long as you provide a channel for people to express themselves, and then you have sophisticated tools to analyze that will give you the ability to still have a lot of data and insights without necessarily asking one particular leader to have the conversations. Another reframing that I want to do is, we assume that leaders always have all the information and the answers. And in the world that we operate today, we do not have necessarily the luxury of time for the information to go up, to get the answer, and then come back. There are certain things that are probably important, but a lot of things are better solved on the ground, just because the worker has the relationship with the customer, or they are the ones who know how the problem can be solved. So I think it's important to also give or create a culture where people are empowered to take action, to make decisions for the work in their sphere of influence, and rely less on this up and down question and answer, because leaders, they may not necessarily have the answers, or they may not have the time to give you the answer. But of course, it's important to have leadership visibility and show up as a human being, not as a corporate machine. Show up empathetic and with flaws, and with family or dogs barking in the background, or I think the more human you come across, the more people are going to be able to relate to you, that yes, you're dealing with as much of a challenge and complexity in your life and business environment as any one of us. So you make yourself more relatable, and speaking human language and not speaking corporate jargon, all of that makes a difference and makes people more approachable and more relatable.
And change cannot happen by just one person, right? Change happens because of many voices, or to, many hands, many voices, many things that we do together to create a more sustainable and better change. So, so thanks for bringing that one up. I really enjoy that, because a lot of time leaders are alone because we let them be alone, and they don't deserve a loneliness like that. If we put ourselves into the lonely situation, then how do we feel? And then how do we justify that it's okay for leaders to be lonely, because that's their role, that's their job? It's not fair for them. So along the way, if we can uplift them, along the way we can help them to do the job better, along the way if we can contribute something better, do it. And our voice matter, right?
It's so interesting, because when I talk to people about empathy, they'll, my manager or my leader or whoever upline there needs to have more empathy for me. But my question is, do you have empathy for them? Because they also have a role to play. They also have challenges they have to deal with. It's a two-way street. You have to understand that it's not just about leaders solving all my problems, but me being an active contributor and a problem solver for the leader as well. It's a two-way street that we need to always keep in mind.
Absolutely. Stella, I will ask you the last question for today. So we knew, how you were when you your dream when you were young. You knew the path that taking you to today, and we congratulations for all the amazing work that you do. It's I really admire that. Now we want to head into the future a little bit, because you're teaching people to colonize Mars, right, and create the the works, the process, that can bring people to work in Mars, right? So head into the future a little bit. Is there anything that exciting that Stella is working on, and you want to share with us, so that we can celebrate with you in advance?
I definitely believe in space exploration, and I can't wait to see the leaders that went through my classes eventually get jobs at some of these organizations. the area that I'm really passionate about at the moment is workplace inclusion. So when we think about diverse abilities that each one of us has, we rarely design products or experiences for those outliers, right? People who may have low vision, or they may not be hearing well, or maybe they have incapacitated limb, or maybe they have cognitive impairment. So we design for the mainstream, and many times the outliers are excluded from participating in the work environment, from having financial security. And there's about 20% of the world population that has permanent or temporary disability. So the more we can think about how technology can help address some of these disparities, how we build accessibility from the get-go in whatever we produce, be that a new app or a new product or a new service, the more will benefit everybody in the world. Because we, as a society, or as a society, we're aging. As we age, there's increased likelihood of certain capacities diminishing. So when we create more accessible and more inclusive solutions, it benefits the future of us, as well as everyone else who has those limitations nowadays. Wow. So that's my area: educating, advising startups, and helping them think a lot more inclusively is what's hopefully going to create a space where we all as humans can thrive, regardless of our physical, cognitive abilities, life stage, age, interests, etc.
Wow. Thanks for doing that, Stella. I always believe that, we are the human beings, right? So we make problem, but we also problem solver. So, collective, yep. So as long as we have the good intention, and then we have a good people, join together, I believe the problems, even how complexity will be solved, and there will be better solutions emerge to solve a lot of, to build a better workplace for everybody. And thanks for doing that. I really enjoyed the conversation today. I once again would like to thank you for spending your evening to join and to share your ideas, your insights, the works that you do, and your stories. And I want to say congratulations for all the achievements once again. And I hope that one day I will be able to see you in person for a cup of coffee, and we can make friends, and like in the real life. Okay.
I would love that. And you're such a great moderator and such an engaging conversationalist. So thank you for such a pleasurable experience.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful evening, and I say hello to your family and members for me, okay?
Sounds good. And you as well.
Okay. Bye-bye, Stella.
Bye.
Bye.